Hey guys, how's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with another video. I just want to apologize in advance for a few aspects of this video, guys. I may not be looking at the camera particularly well, and you're going to see some pretty big glare on my face because I'm going to be reading some news stories. I said I was going to avoid talking about politics for a while, but I read this stuff and it just pissed me off so badly that I really couldn't resist um, post or talking about this a little bit. Basically, I'm here to break down um, really why Hillary lost and the the pushback and the war that's going on in the Democratic Party right now, and some things that looks like some leftward leaning press is saying. So I'm going to talk about. There's a few articles from the Guardian. I'm going to link them in the description below so you can read these for yourself. The headline of this first article is Bernie Sanders still says class is more important than race. He is still wrong. I disagree with that entirely. That is, in my opinion, a ridiculous headline. I think class is definitely more important than race, but they apparently think the opposite. And let me get to some of the most brilliant observations in this article. Let's see. Oh, I love the intro. It appears that in the aftermath of a monumental but nonetheless failed presidential campaign, Bernie Sanders remains most comfortable in the spot that made him a loser, trying to separate class and race. Okay. And here's basically here's a paragraph. At a speech in Boston on Sunday, the Vermont senator advocating going beyond identity politics, declaring the working class of this country is being decimated. That's why Donald Trump won. And what we need now are candidates who stand with those working people who understand that real median family income has gone down. And here's their real response. Yes, it has, but Sanders, like the others parading this pedestrian punditry in the aftermath of the news that most white people voted for Donald Trump, is missing the point while continuing to promote the very ideas that sunk him during the primary. He lost many potential voters of color because we know colorblind economic policies alone will not change certain realities of racism in America. They might make America great again, but only for people who have always had it pretty good. In October, basically, it's they're just bashing him because he wasn't going on and on and on about race in his campaign. And here's another one. He said, here's another slam against him. In his Boston speech, he demonstrated this blind spot yet again when a woman in the audience asked Sanders how she could become the second ever Latina senator. And here's his response. It's not good enough for somebody to say, I'm a woman, vote for me, Sanders explained. No, that's not good enough. What we need is a woman who has the guts to stand up to Wall Street, to the insurance companies, to the drug companies, to the fossil fuel industry. In other words, one of the struggles that you're going to be seeing in the Democratic Party is whether we go beyond identity politics. And now here's their response to that, this person who wrote this. Why should we pretend identity politics hasn't always been America's way? That discounting them invalidates the lived experience of the very people that opted against sending him to the general election. When Bernie Sanders talks about the Democratic Party's failure to reach working class white voters, he manages to somehow forget he lost to a woman who bested him partly because she spoke of the need of criminal justice reform and the overall racism plays in America before he did. Well, here's the thing about that, you idiot who wrote this article. Uh, Hillary Clinton, back in the 90s, talked about super predators, and her husband was a big part of the privatization of prisons. and also a big part of, you know, expanding the prison population quite a bit. And a lot of the, a lot of that is racial. A lot of blacks are in prison. Whereas Bernie Sanders had been fighting for he fought for civil rights like back in the 60s. So yeah, I think as far as the bona fides, as far as who cares more about civil rights, I'd say Bernie Sanders wins that pretty handily. Um, and here's their response. Bernie Sanders owed that woman a better answer. He should have mentioned the need to combat voter suppression. Should have mentioned how identity politics matter because one's identity in this country can very much play into economic status. Instead, Sanders went to what makes him comfortable rather than address reality. Trump voters proved they were willing to let a con man break the country rather than share it with the rest of us. The failure of Democrats wasn't that they didn't coddle white working class people enough. It was that they failed to explain how, unless you are wealthy, white, and connected like Trump, you will fail like every other person he screwed throughout his career. That a multicultural coalition rooted in economic plurality for all benefits everyone most. If Sanders' insistence on moving past identity politics is the next step in his revolution, may it suffer even more defeat than it did in the primary. And then they have the gall to ask for money after that for reading this wonderful article. Okay, here's my reaction to this. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the current president, at least for the next couple of months, is a black man. Lots and lots and lots of white people voted for him. Lots of evil white men voted for him. Do you know why? Because they thought that he would bring positive change to this country. And, I think that was a big part. I think that's the biggest reason he won, honestly. And frankly, he was more charismatic than his opponents by a lot. But I think the reason a lot of white working class voted for him is because of the fact that they thought he was the better choice, and they did not see Hillary Clinton as that. They did not see Hillary Clinton as the better choice because of a whole host of reasons. So yeah, I mean it's literally that simple. Now here's another article, also in the Guardian. White fragility, white fear, the crisis of racial identity in Australia and beyond. You're asking why I'm talking about Australia, where they actually reference, of course, the election in this article as well. Let's see here. Here we go. It says, with the U.S. election now decided, it's interesting watching the fallout, asking how this could have happened. I read an article last week that provided some insight behind 2016's turmoil. A Crisis of White Identity was written by Amanda Taub and published in the New York Times. It highlighted the rise of white supremacists across the globe under the veil of conservative nationalism. Okay, so let's see. Let me find the American part here. Where they, oh, here it is. Meanwhile, across the West, we see hate against Muslims, refugees, and ethnic minorities with the racist catch cries. I want my country back. We are full. Australia for Australians. And of course, let's make America great again. I don't think that's a hateful thing, but whatever. Lecturer and author Robin DiAngelo calls this movement white fragility, the stress white people feel in trying to understand they are not special and just are another race like any other. White fragility leads to feelings of insecurity, defensiveness, even threat. It creates a backlash against those perceived as the other. Okay, again. I would consider myself a white working class person. I'd say that's a pretty accurate description of me. Yes, I have a blue collar middle class type of job, but I don't consider myself that. I definitely consider myself more of the working class. I have to work really hard for my money. So in my opinion, if you have to work really hard for your money, you don't have just a cushy, easy nothing job. You're working class. So I definitely identify with that demographic, and I have no fear of minorities. I have no fear of blacks. I have no fear of gays. I don't fear Mexicans, Muslims, whatever. Now, uh, I don't care if they're around holding jobs, various jobs, as long as they're qualified for these jobs. That's the whole thing. I want people to be qualified for the jobs that they're in. Um, that's really what matters. Are they going to do these jobs effectively? The same goes for political leaders as far as their gender, race, or sexual orientation. It doesn't really matter to me very much. Um, Although it bothers me quite a bit if people are trying to push through these agendas, uh, where they're obsessed with this sort of gender politics. I think, or not gender politics. I'm sorry, identity politics. It's ridiculous. Um, this is just completely tone deaf on the part of the establishment media. It's like they're really off the rails here. It's crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous to me. Absolutely ridiculous. Wake the fuck up, people. The reason the Democrats lost resoundingly is because they ignored I guess they were all focused on, Hillary was like, well, I'm a woman, and if you don't vote for me, you're a misogynist. Trump is racist and horrible, and this, that, and the other. Break down the barriers, where that message didn't appeal to a key demographic, obviously. So that's why she lost. And Bernie Sanders keeps saying, hey, we need to talk to this demographic, this critical demographic that is being decimated in this country. Decimated. Okay. This is why Hillary Clinton lost. And honestly, if the Democrats can't wake up and reverse course on this and actually start looking at issues of working class people and addressing them, they will continue to lose elections. If all they base it on is, if you're some sort of a minority and elevating that above everything else, that's going to lose them elections. You're not going to win based on that. I'm sorry, that's not going to do it. You need to focus on issues of the working class. I'm totally fine with addressing issues that minorities face. For example, I think it should be mandated that all police officers have body cams on them, across the whole nation. I'd be totally fine with that. I'm fine with anything that equalizes the playing field for people of all races or whatever. I'm totally fine with equalizing the playing field for everyone. But, just because you have an equal playing field does not mean you're always going to have equal results, but that's a whole other ballgame. But I'm totally for equalizing the playing field for everyone, and I have no problem with that. And I would say probably 90% of 90 to 95% of what the evil white people probably feel the same way. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, and at least on that subject. And this leads me to segue into my other subject of this video. I don't really think Trump is going to be a champion of the working class like his rhetoric was in the election. I hope I'm wrong, but if you've paid attention to his transition team, it looks like he is mostly selecting, Washington elite insiders. He was going to drain the swamp, it seems like he's wading pretty deep into that swamp right now. I don't think he has any intentions of draining it whatsoever. I don't really think he ever was going to. I could be proven wrong, but his actions up to, and I know he hasn't even taken office yet, but his actions up to this point seem to kind of point in the opposite direction. One thing that they're already floating around is rolling back the executive order that Obama put down, for overtime for salaried workers. They're wanting to roll that back. And that's fucking bullshit. So yeah, I'm not a fan of obviously what's happening, but I wouldn't have been a fan of the other thing either. It's like for I think rational, reasonable people, uh, I think really at least progressive, liberal leaning people. I think there's only one hope, and that is that the Bernie Sanders wing of the part, really starts to, the Democrats maybe go in that direction. If that doesn't happen, if they continue on what they're doing, they're going to continue to lose, and that's that. So I guess if they want to self-destruct like that, that's fine. That's pretty much all I have to say. I know this was a bit disjointed. I will link to the articles in the description just so you can read for yourself, see what you think of them. Obviously, I largely disagreed with their assertions. And I think if you just sit around, whine and cry about identity politics, that's a way to make yourself completely irrelevant. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. If you did like it, as always, please thumbs up, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thanks a whole lot for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.